In this video, we're going to be taking a look at a clip from the Joe Rogan Experience of Bob Lazar, the Area 51 whistleblower, describing in detail working on a UFO. Now, why am I making this video? Well, originally my sentiment about Bob Lazar's story was that I was very skeptical of it, to be honest. But recently, at the end of a video that I made a few weeks ago, I decided I'm going to take a fresh look. It's 2024, fresh, new year. I'm going to take a fresh look at Bob Lazar's story from scratch, clear my mind and begin this new journey about Bob Lazar and see where I land. Now, he's just a very polarizing figure in the UFO community, and his story is quite fascinating. So I think it's appropriate, especially in light of David Grush and all the recent developments in the UFO world, to sort of revisit his story. So without further ado, let's begin. If you're new to the channel and you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button, y'all. We put out a new video every day, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do not miss a day. And of course, please hit that like button, y'all. That really helps out the videos. So thank y'all so much for the support there, vetters. And don't forget to comment down below of what you think of Bob Lazar's story, specifically the craft here and some of the details that we're going to get into, right? So I'm super excited to read the comments. Please be kind and respectful down there. All right, let's jump in. Now, before we begin with the clip, I wanted to show y'all some of his sketches, right, of the craft, so that you can have that sort of in your mind when you're listening to his story. So this is an original sketch by Bob Lazar, right? The very first one of the craft that he describes. And again, I'll put links in the description to all of this so you can check it out yourself, right? You go, waveguide, reactor, gravity, kind of showing what's happening. Then we got this one here. It's autographed. This is a newer one. And you can see more inside the craft, right? Because he got inside the craft, right? And here's this one here. This one's pretty cool. I honestly would love to have this on my wall. I mean, this just looks legit, doesn't it? I mean, this looks like real blueprints for a UFO, which allegedly it is. And it's this I found it on eBay. Looks like to Steve, best wishes, right? It's autographed. This thing's going for like $300, by the way. But look how cool it is. It is really cool, man. I will be honest. I mean, look at all the details, Again, I don't know anything about schematics or engineering, so I don't know how realistic it is. But just from me looking at it, I mean, it just looks cool. Again, I would love to have that up. All right, let's jump into this, to the clip and begin. Bob Lazar. Again, Bob Lazar on the Joe Rogan Experience talking about working on an actual UFO. Let's go.
So they somehow or another had acquired a stable version. Did they say that the stable version had come with this craft?
Yeah, it absolutely came with the craft, yeah.
So at the time, you having a firm knowledge of the periodic chart and knowing what was real and what wasn't real, what was your reaction to having this stable element 115 that wasn't even supposed to exist?
Well, everything was impossible.
Right.
I mean, down to the metal. I did get a chance to look inside the craft on only one occasion, and this was important because where the reactor sat might have been critical to how it operated, since everything operates without any interconnection, so the placement of components might be critical. So they allowed me to go inside and look at it. Again, I forgot where the hell I am.
So you're going into this craft, and what are you thinking when you're inside of it? Like, what are you seeing?
It's a very ominous feeling because there are no, first of all, everything is one color. It's like a dark pewter color, and there are no right angles anywhere. It's as if somebody took, I've said this before, somebody took a model and fashioned it out of wax and then heated it just for a short time so everything melted. Everything looks like it's fused together. Everything has a radius of curvature where two items meet. It's a really weird looking thing, but there was almost nothing other than a small foldable hatchway that looked recognizable. Everything was was really unworldly depicting it.
So real quick, I am going to be pausing this as we go along. I know some of you, don't like that, but, for copyright purposes, I need to do that. So if you want to watch it uninterrupted, again, links down in the description. You can watch it without my commentary. Something interesting here, this advanced craft, and it just has this like hatch that opens up. That's interesting. Like, how does it seal? Does it seal properly? Be curious about that, right? But if it's all like one piece and then I have a hatch, like, does it have like hinges, like regular hinges, right? Like, how is it folding? How thick is it? You know what I mean? And how do you open the hatch? Is it like a submarine sort of thing where it's got like the wheel on the top? Like, how is it opening? Like a car door? Do you hit a button? Is it automatic? Does it? I mean, what? Right? That's all I'm wondering is more details about this hatch, and because he doesn't talk about this, and he doesn't talk about like how does he get down the hatch? Is it a ladder? Does he pop down? Again, I don't know. Just curious. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions in this video, so I will say this: he talks about like, oh man, where forget where I am or whatever. Like he does mention that at the beginning of the interview that he has a migraine. Throughout the interview. So you may hear him kind of do some of that. But, I remember initially when I heard that, I thought, wow, okay, dude, you got a migraine. That's how convenient, right? But I got to be honest, again, just to play devil's advocate, right? To be fair to Bob here, the more I think about it, just to be fair, again, I'm not saying whatever, but, think about it. You're going on the Joe Rogan Experience. This is a huge platform, right? The biggest podcast in the world at that time. And it's still in the top, right? Like, that can make you nervous. So, regardless if your story is true or not. You know what I mean? Because if your story's true, you can still be nervous. If your story's not true, you can still be nervous. So, I think there's a little leeway there, right? Like, I don't know if that's, like, I can totally understand Bob being nervous going on the Joe Rogan Experience. That totally makes sense. And you'd have a migraine and you're thinking about, So, like, I get that. All right, let's continue here.
A way to describe it.
So you get inside this thing, and it's designed for something that's much smaller than a human being.
Yeah, you can't really stand up till you get to the very center of it.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'10".
And what do you think this was designed for?
I'd say something close to half my height.
Wow. So these little 3-foot tallish creatures.
Yeah, and the seats were small too. I mean, obviously it was made, for something small. But there is no, there's nothing else in there. There's just seats, the reactor, and some of the subcomponents. There's no control panels. There's no bathroom. There's no decorative components or artwork or anything that you would recognize or trim. I mean, it's just a very bare bones thing.
You're not seeing any screens?
Well, there are archways around it that are part of the superstructure, and that one of the archways can become transparent. When I was in there was another group working on one of the archways, and you could call that a screen, more or less.
So through that archway, it would maintain the solidity, the solid, whatever metal it was.
Yeah.
But you could see through
it just became transparent. Yeah. I saw that happen once or twice before I left.
Did you ask?
So, real quick, the last comment, like, I saw it once or twice. Wouldn't you know exactly if you saw it once or twice? That seems like a pretty important thing that you would, remember. Like, that's like a life-changing event, right, to see that, be on board this UFO, because he only got to be inside the UFO one time. So I don't know how he saw it once or twice, right? He only made one trip inside the UFO, so he saw it twice in that moment. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's whatever detail, but that is interesting. The archway, it goes clear. Like, what would be the point of that for the aliens? You know what I mean? Like, what would be the point of having that go transparent inside of your own ship, right? This structural thing that goes transparent. I don't understand. What's the point of that? But who knows? Maybe something we don't understand. So that's totally feasible, right? Yeah, I mean, look, this part of the story is very hard to like poke holes in, because at the end of the day, we have zero clue. Well, you know, depending on who you ask, right? Like, what reference do us normal folks have of the inside of a UFO? We don't know. So it's hard to be like, bullshit, a UFO wouldn't have that. How do we know what a UFO wouldn't have? An alien spacecraft. Like, how the hell would we know what it has and what it doesn't? Something that wouldn't make any sense to us, right? But to them. But at the same time, to play flip side to that, what else can we do? We have to reference it off things that we know if we're going to speculate, right? We have no other choice. Otherwise, the conversation just ends. Well, you can't just speculate anything because, well, how would you know? Right, we can't just end the conversation. So there's, it's just we have to consider both things as we discuss it, I think. Right, just to be fair. So, but it is interesting, right? It's made for short people, right? Maybe 3 feet tall, more or less. 3 small seats that just go around, no controls, right? So maybe mind controlled. I don't know. I mean, this is fascinating. And this is the vehicle that this is the craft that he got to work on, right? He talks about 9 craft in total later on in this video, right? So that is interesting. But yeah, let's continue.
Questions about what the fuck which way it would maintain the solidity, the solid whatever metal it was.
Yeah.
But you could see through
it just became transparent. Yeah. I saw that happen once or twice before I left.
Did you ask any questions about what the fuck
No, there's
was?
no asking
There's
questions.
no asking questions.
No.
But when you watch something become transparent and you realize it's still there, but you can now see through it.
Yeah, I mean, now that's not that impressive. We do have some liquid crystal materials that are like that. They have
seen that in bathrooms.
smart glass. Yeah, they call it smart glass. So this is just, and I don't know if the craft is made of, an advanced metal or a ceramic. It was cold to the touch. So, I would lean more towards a metal.
You're not allowed to ask questions.
No, they work on the buddy system, so I can only exchange ideas and talk to Barry. Now, this really interferes with science because science is based on free discussion. And ideally, you get a bunch of guys together, exchange ideas, work on problems, and that's how things move forward. But they're so over the top concerned about security, they split everything off and everybody becomes stagnant. It just destroys any of the progress you can make, or at least makes it go so slow. I think they wind up shooting themselves in the foot.
Which is,
look, that's a fair point that Bob's making right now, right? That they would stovepipe this scenario, right? Because it is such a, monumental discovery, right? And knowledge to have and to be working with, right? And it could be dangerous, right? I mean, this is supposedly craft that we don't know much about, right? The security measures that must be in place to perform experiments, walk inside of it. I mean, that's another thing about Bob going inside of this. Did he have a mask on? Was a suit? Like, how do they know touching this stuff doesn't, what if certain people are allergic to it? How do you test for that before you just let right? Was he wearing gloves? Right? The atmosphere inside this UFO, were there vents or something? Like, how did they know you can, right? How does it seal off the atmosphere? I don't know, right? I mean, just whatever. I don't know. It is fascinating, right? It is fascinating to think about. But again, the stovepiping idea is interesting. But again, later on in this video, right, he is going to state that he sees other craft. And I find that interesting that happened one time. They just let him see the other craft, if they're trying to stovepipe this. And they let him see a test flight of the UFO that he's working on. One time only. Again, so they let him walk in at one time, sees one test flight, sees the other craft one time. I mean, I don't know. I guess that is compartmentalization. That is stovepiping. But that seems like a lot to give out, because if you let them see the other craft and he got a bunch of details from it, you're going to have questions, right? That you then can't have answered, and knowledge. I don't know. Anyway, it is interesting. But the idea that they would stovepipe it, sure. Totally makes sense, right? If that would make sense as part of Bob's story, that is what happens, So, again, just to be fair to Bob.
Which is probably why they arrived at this bottleneck that they needed to get this madman with a jet-powered Honda come in and see what he could do.
I think that was an act of desperation. I think they wanted someone that thinks out of the box and let's just give this guy a try here, because
Right.
they weren't, and they might have done this 4 more times since up to the point in time today, assuming they're still working on this thing.
So real quick, sorry, I don't mean to pause right there, but I just want to, in Bob's defense, I've thought about this, okay? Because originally there's this idea that, oh, why pick Bob? He's this crazy guy with this dubious past. Like, why would we pick this guy? Like, that makes no sense, right? But think about it. Just to be fair to him, that kind of would make sense because that's the last guy you think they would pick. So therefore you would call bullshit, right? It's kind of almost seems like the perfect pick. Again, I'm not saying that that's true. I'm just saying that would be 4D chess from the government to start picking these kind of people, especially if you can't just go reach out to the best because, well, that's just not feasible. So you got to kind of pick some, what people may allege as, an ambiguous past. I'm not saying anything. That's what other people say about his past, right? So, I mean, look at other examples that our government ministeric goats, right? We could go down the line of different programs that the government has run, and even ones we don't know about, where they have picked people that you may not think is, it's an odd choice, right? So, if we have a craft, maybe you do give a guy like this a crack at it. That's not, the more I think about it, that's not that crazy of an idea. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying to just easily dismiss it because of that, I'm not there. I can't do that, right? Because, kind of, I could see something there. If Bob is that smart, yeah, let's give this guy a crack. Just see, maybe he just looks at it a different way. He's going to think about it a different way. We need a new approach. We need a different approach. So I could see that, to be honest. Again, to be fair to Bob.
And when you see this craft and you're inside, was there any indication that there was an area that they would use to control it, to pilot it? Was there a pilot seat?
There were 3 seats. They sat around, the reactor was in the dead center of it, and then equidistant around there were 3 seats. And that's all. There was a large, they're not consoles, they're large rectangular objects, also spaced equidistant around the center. There's nothing on them. There's no buttons. There's no lights. There's
and
no
they
controls.
look the same color, the same
Everything
thing.
is the same
It's
color.
just a different shape.
Right. And directly underneath them, there's 3 levels in the craft. The main level is what we're talking about. Directly under that, those are the gravity amplifiers, the big rectangular objects. Underneath them are the gravity emitters that look like, for lack of a better word, a trash can hanging on a pipe. 3 of those. And then the top layer, this is just my personal belief, I think that has to do with a navigation or their version of a computer with some planar panels, sensor panels around the craft that we would call portholes, but they're not portholes. They're just black areas. And I think that just determines its position in space.
That's interesting. I mean, look, if I'm being honest, again, fresh look, this sounds fascinating. This absolutely sounds fascinating. The way he's describing it, I got to be honest, that seems feasible as being a UFO like this, the way he's describing it, it's the most detailed story of a actual UFO that the government may be hiding we've ever heard. In my opinion, I don't know of a better one. You know what I mean? So, in some ways, it may not even matter to some extent, okay? I'm just saying whether or not Bob's story is true or not. Because it's just kind of interesting to just hear the story and speculate about it. That's all. It's interesting. It's interesting to hear it, because again, describing it this way, I don't know, how UFOs are supposed to be built. So that's interesting. No controls, 3 seats, small seats, right, around the reactor. That's kind of interesting. That's like sitting around the gas tank of a car or something, like directly around it. Why the reactor there? It seems like that could be dangerous, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It is interesting. I gotta be honest. Oh, hang on, y'all. Let me, oh no. Okay. Let's see if that worked.
Bottom section and hung
There
upside
we
down
go.
so I could see
My apologies.
how the gravity amplifiers were positioned.
What is the roughly the size of this thing?
It's I think it. I don't remember from being there, but after all this stuff was over, I had John Andrews, a guy from the Testers Model Corporation, and we sat down and tried to figure out from what I saw and known sizes of things, and we came up with 52 feet in diameter. And
So
I
it's
think that's
fairly small.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair, a reasonable guess.
Now, you said there's 9 of them, and you got a brief glimpse at the other ones. How were they different?
Oh, they looked completely different. One looked like I called a Jello mold, and it looked like a classic Jello mold with the rippled sides to it. One was a very flat disc, like like a straw hat or something like that. That was sitting up on its edge, and the thin part of it looked like a projectile had been fired through the edge of it. So I don't know if they were attempting to see if the metal could be penetrated, or if that's where the thing came from. Maybe it was shot down. But that was the only one where I saw there was, actual physical damage to it.
So look, again, this getting a brief glimpse at all this sounds interesting to me. Like, how brief a glimpse? Because he's telling a lot of details, right? And for what distance did he start to see these craft? Like right after he got out of the bus? Was this at lunchtime? Was this on a bathroom break? Was he with other people and he got the glimpse, right? Was this guy Barry with him? That's his partner. I don't know. I just find that interesting. Like, how long did he get a look at it? And was he walking while he did it, or he was standing still? Like, how good was the lighting? Like, is he 100% certain about these details he's saying, or he pretty certain that's what he saw? The damage and all that, and the, Jello mold. I mean, what were the other ones like? I'd like to see a sketch of that, like his vision of what that was. That would be interesting. Right? Like, what his viewpoint was. Because 9 of them, they would have to be lined up in a way that you could see all 9. Because, and how could you count real quickly? Because if it was kind of like, depending on what angle you're looking at, like if it was a bunch of garages, right? Like, bays in a garage, like you'd probably be like, oh, that's 7, 8, 9, I don't know, right? Like, but he's like 9. But maybe over time, he's just confirmed that in his head, right? Okay, 9. Yeah, it was 9. So that's possible. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what his viewpoint was. Like, what was the angle he saw him at, right? But the types of UFOs he describes is interesting. A Jello mold. I don't know if I've ever heard of that kind of UFO before, and why? And why are they different shapes and sizes? Like, why would they have different, like, are they ARVs, like alien replica vehicles, like stuff we've reverse engineered? Or these are different species? Like, why would they be different? Would a species come and have different types of craft? I guess that's possible, right? Or it's different species, right? I mean, because later on in the interview, he goes on to talk about these could be archaeological digs, some of them, whatever, recent, right? Like a mix. I don't know. It's interesting. That's interesting. And why would you have them all lined up together in one place? That seems like a bad security move, right? To just have them all lined up together. If you're stovepiping this thing, wouldn't you separate all the UFOs? Have them at different facilities? I don't know why you keep them all in one place like that. Because then clearly you can't compartmentalize it, especially if someone could just get a brief glimpse on the, on the way to the bathroom. Oops. God damn it, Greg, you didn't shut the bay doors. They could see everything, right? Like they're just yelling at the security guy. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know, y'all. Just asking questions. These are just my first thoughts, right? Fresh look. I haven't seen this interview in a long time. So this is all just sort of fresh ideas and thoughts that are coming to me. I'm just trying to fill in the blanks in my mind of what I'm seeing, right? Because I can imagine what Bob's saying, but I get all these blank spots. So I just need to fill that in. That's all I'm doing. That's where my questions come from. I'm just trying to fill in the blank spots in my mind of trying to picture what he's saying to me. All right, let's continue.
That one was roughly the same size? They're all...
They were kind of too far away to tell.
And there was several teams that were working on the propulsion system, so there was different teams that were working on these different aircrafts?
I don't know. I could only assume.
Right. Now, when you're sitting in this thing and you're looking at this otherworldly craft, your goal is to try to figure out how this thing functions. Your goal is to try to figure out how this reactor, but you would imagine they would give you more time than just one day to check that out.
Oh, it wasn't one day.
Right.
Yeah, Barry was there. I think Barry was sleeping there. I'm sure they had. Now, that isn't weird. Up at the Tonopah test range where they work on stealth fighters, you go, I think, 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and you stay up there too. So it's not weird to stay up at the test site.
Right.
So, I think he pretty much, and he acted like he's been up there for a long time.
Yeah.
But
he's still there.
Yeah. Who knows?
Do you have contact with this guy?
No. Oh, no. I wish I did. I kind of thought he was going to come out after I did.
Right.
And I think I took so much flack and it's so much shit for what went on. I think I wound up helping security there, and everybody became afraid of, doing or saying anything after that.
So look, to me, a big part of, and pardon all the technical difficulties on today's episode. For me, a big part of this story, honestly, the biggest key to Bob's story to me is Barry. It's this guy. Because this guy is with Bob for everything, just about, right? Especially on site. And if this guy were to ever come out or we were able to find out more about him, that would completely, right? That would be a big step forward to helping understand Bob's story a lot more. And I think it would take quite a few people over the finish line to believing him, to be honest. Right, to hear from another person, right, that was there too, But look, it also, to be fair to Bob, right, and what he's saying, that totally makes sense. If this was true, and Bob comes out and the ridicule he gets, of course people are going to be scared. Of course they're going to tighten security. Like that makes sense. That totally makes sense that they would do that. It just does, right? And then that Barry guy would be like, fuck that, I'm not getting out there, I don't know. But all these years, like, is he still alive? Like, how old is the guy? Right? More or less. I don't know. If Barry's watching, he's got to know by now. Would he not feel safe coming out now? Again, maybe he's still working on the program. I don't know. Interesting.
So what kind of reports did you have to give? So you're not making much progress, right? You're just trying to figure out what this thing is, and it seems impossible.
Well, we didn't personally make them. We were always, there was never a lot of information that we gained. The guy, you would call him our supervisor, his name was Dennis Mariani, and kind of a military-looking guy. And he would routinely pop in, during the day and, hey, what's going on, guys? And he would essentially relay any information, anything new we came up with. He was our go-between, where we presented him the information, then he took it to wherever they were, assembling all the data from everybody.
Now, I assume you're working normal days, like an 8-hour day?
No.
No?
No, it was really weird that I would be only called in on certain times and certain days. and they would be weird hours too. Most of the time was later in the evening. I mean, I can get a call at 11 o'clock at night, and they'll say, you know, it's now 11 o'clock. By 11:45, you need to be at the McCarran terminal, and, you know, we'll let you know when we have more information.
But what?
That seems a little odd, right? We'll let you know when we have more information. What does that mean? I mean, if you go multiple times, you kind of know what to expect, right? Like, okay, Bob, you know, 11:45 this time. Why would they tell you what time it is? It's 11 o'clock. Like, why would they tell you what time it is? That seems odd. But, you know, I'll be honest, like, having him go out in the middle of the night, whatever, that seems plausible. Right? That does seem plausible. You know, in the wee hours of the night, they're bringing people out to look at this stuff. I mean, that does seem completely plausible. But why wouldn't they have Bob stay out there too? You know, keep an eye on him while he's looking at this stuff. Make sure you don't take anything back. That sort of thing. I don't know. But maybe you need him to maintain his normal life, right? I mean, who knows, right? There's a lot of reasons for that. What I find interesting is, like, why all the experiments for this thing? And then, like, giving the data, and it goes to someone, you know, they give it to the guy, they present the data, and then he goes to someone else. Like, why wouldn't they be presenting data to Bob and Barry and saying, here's what we've done so far on it. Several people have done it, right? Here's the results. Try something new, right? Instead, they just leave them to just try whatever they want, and they would just be repeating experiments that have already failed. So why keep repeating that? That seems odd to me, like a waste of time. No wonder we're not making any progress. We just have people doing the same thing. Right? Like, you would want a different solution. Like, try something else. It's like if you had a, I don't know, toilet problem or something, how you call a plumber, and he comes and tries one move, and he doesn't get it. So you call another plumber. That guy comes and tries the same move, doesn't get it. You call another plumber. He does the same, and you just keep doing that. Wouldn't you eventually go, hey, dude, can we try something else? Can we try something different? Different approach here. So that's what I don't understand, that they wouldn't be presented with all the results of previous said, right? So they could build on the back of, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not a scientist or an engineer, but, you know, I don't know. I'm just talking, just normal guy here asking questions, y'all.
What did you do while you were there? If you're looking at this object, this reactor, and you can't figure out what it is or how it works, other than the fact that it works on this element that we don't even know about.
Sure. I mean, the thing was what you do in, you know, with anything. If you're trying to analyze it, all you can do is perform tests. And all we did is try and come up with every kind of test we possibly could. I mean, we tested, you know, it violated a lot of what we thought was impossible to violate. I mean, one of the first laws of thermodynamics, I mean, essentially any machine, any device that operates always makes extra heat. Nothing works at 100% efficient. Even the headphones you're wearing, anything that takes power, some of that power is going to be converted to heat, and it's just wasted. This didn't. I mean, we looked at, back then we had infrared cameras. They're different today, but back then you had to pour liquid nitrogen into the camera to cool the sensor down and get these infrared images you've seen. But it never got, no matter what the load was on the reactor, it never got above the ambient temperature, which is impossible. I mean,
Again, why wouldn't they have already done this a bazillion times and let them know, hey, don't waste your time on this. We've already done this. Here's the results. That just seems odd to me. Even if you're trying to stovepipe, passing on the results of the previous experiment doesn't, you're going to assume other people have worked on it. So it's not like that's what it gives away. Oh, they've worked on this before. Right. So I just, that seems odd to me. You're just going to perform, right? Anyway, I don't know.
You know, and get these infrared images you've seen. But it never got, no matter what the load was on the reactor, it never got above the ambient temperature, which is impossible. I mean, pulling out huge amounts of power, and nothing ever gets warm. We tried measuring magnetic fields, and there was nothing there. So we started playing around with the emission from the emitters, the gravity wave itself, and saw what we could do with it and how it was focused. So we really spent all our time just trying to see what the stuff can do and what we can control.
So you were seeing what it could do, but you couldn't ever figure out how it was doing it.
No, not really. I mean, we really could only use come up with a best guess. And now I can't say we really that I could absolutely state for certainty how anything actually worked.
Now, how did you know it all?
Look, I can appreciate Bob's honesty there. Right? To be fair. Just to be fair to him. Just saying. And I will say, I'll start that over again. I will say, just look, like Bob does look like some dude, like some scientist they would have had working on there. He does kind of fit the bill. Look at him, right? Like he kind of has that look of like a scientist that did work on this stuff. So just to be fair to him.
I'll come up with a best guess. And now I can't say we really that I could absolutely state for certainty how anything actually worked.
Now, how did you know at all how they were piloting it? Because they were doing some tests where they were having these things fly around in the sky, and this is what gets us deeper into your story.
Right. I was out there for one test. Right. In fact, I was with Barry in the lab, and Dennis came in and said, we're about to run a test. Why don't you guys come out? Or I think he said, Barry, why don't you come out here and bring Bob with you? We went out there, and the craft was already outside the hangar and was just preparing to lift off. Now, they were in communication with somebody in the craft.
So there was a person in the craft?
Yeah, there was certainly a person in there. Now, it's not a comfortable place to be in because it's small. So the guy has to be sitting on the floor in the middle, my best guess.
And this is the same specific craft that you worked on because that was the only craft that you were in.
The only one that I touched and worked on. And it quietly lifted off the ground, which was incredibly impressive to see.
Hang on real quick. I'll back it up so we don't miss this. Just so I don't forget. He's thinking that the guy that's inside the craft is sitting down in the middle, but isn't that where the reactor is and the chairs are around it? How are you going to sit in the middle? And the middle is tall enough to stand up in. You figure that they would have secured something inside of the craft for, someone to sit in, a human to sit in, right? They would have put something in there. Okay, a temporary seat or something, right? And again, Bob can't see inside, so maybe he just doesn't know that, right? To be fair to him, too. It's not like he knows that information. I'm just saying, I don't know why he would think the guy would just, some dude would just sit down in the middle, which, again, I thought the reactor was in the middle with the chairs around. So how are you sitting in the middle? But anyway, back this up a little bit.
Floor in the middle, my best guess.
And this is the same specific craft that you worked on because that was the only craft that you were in.
The only one that I touched and worked on. And it quietly lifted off the ground, which was incredibly impressive to see.
Quietly or silently?
Well, quietly, because it
make some sort of a noise?
It produced a little corona discharge from the bottom. A corona discharge is kind of a high voltage brush, little bluish glow discharge. As it was lifting off the ground, you can hear a slight hiss sound. Now, as soon as it cleared the ground by about 5 or 10 feet, maybe even less than that, the hissing stopped and the blue glow disappeared. So it lifted off quietly and then it hovered silently, if you want to be specific.
Wow. So then what kind of maneuvers was it doing?
It took for that particular time, it took off, moved a little around to the left and right, and then sat back down. The craft itself, they communicated with it because I saw the guy talking in a regular VHF radio to the person in the craft. And I even saw the frequency that was on the frequency counter, the communication, the transceiver there. But what's weird is he shouldn't be able to communicate with the craft with a radio. The radio wave should bend around the craft. I mean, it shouldn't be possible. Every single thing about the craft and the way they operated didn't make any sense to us. I mean, that's something we talked about for a while after.
Why should the frequency bend around the craft?
Well, you really have to look at the way the gravity wave comes out of the craft. There's the reactor's in the center, and there's a waveguide that goes up to the top. There's actually a small appendage that sticks out of the top of the craft, and it produces a heart-shaped gravitational distortion around the craft. Now, if the craft is sitting in the air and you walk underneath it and look up, you actually cannot see the craft. The light bends around it. You're bending gravity, bends light. It bends radio waves. It shouldn't be possible to communicate with a craft that has an envelope around it that's distorting all forms of energy. But they were apparently in contact with it.
Somehow or another, so through some unexplained way that they didn't bother explaining to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. Okay, just a few things here. Like, one, so Bob is saying if you were to go under the craft, like how would he know that? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Did someone tell him that if you go underneath it, you can't see through? Because he didn't say he had done that, right? Or did he? Did he go underneath this craft? And why would you do that? Wouldn't you be afraid? Like, wouldn't they test that? I don't know. Wouldn't you be in some kind of suit? I don't know. Like, it could do something to you, you know? But it does make sense that they would just test it by, going up, just kind of do down, that makes sense, right? But this idea that this advanced special craft with a heart-shaped gravitational wave around it can literally be penetrated with a walkie-talkie, that sounds odd to me, for sure. Clearly doesn't have the best defense set up if that's what can penetrate it, of all things. That just seems interesting to me. Like the radio signal, like they wouldn't have that figured out. Or maybe it's not, doesn't do anything to them, so they don't worry about it. That's also possible. That's also possible. And how would they, I guess they'd already developed that is the system they can use inside, which is walkie-talkies. So they would already know to do that. That's interesting. Like, how are they controlling it going up? Like, how are they making it maneuver? What's the guy inside doing if it doesn't have controls? Is he controlling it with his mind? Is this a special kind of pilot? Like, how is it being controlled? How is he flying it? I don't know. How are they turning it on? Like, how do they... I don't know. Like, why wouldn't they tell Bob all that stuff? Like, how they do that stuff so that they could better understand the craft if they're going to bring him out to look at it. So, I don't know. Anyway, just questions, y'all. Again, fascinating story. Absolutely fascinating.
So this thing gets up.
That has an envelope around it that's distorting all forms of energy. But they were apparently in contact with it.
Somehow or another, so through some unexplained way that they didn't bother explaining to you. Mm-hmm. So this thing gets up. It just does some very simple maneuvers, left, right, goes down. And did they discuss this with you? I mean, they said they wanted you to see it.
No, they just wanted, they didn't discuss anything with me. It sat down, we looked around for a bit, and Barry said, let's go back. We went back in the lab. All we got to do was see it. Fast forward to some months later, I did have the test flight schedule of the craft. Now, they had times they had designated high-performance tests. This obviously wasn't one that was a high-performance test. The high-performance test goes above the mountain range, and they do much more radical moves with the thing. Look, this is a prized item. And they're not doing anything like taking it out of the atmosphere or flying around to other countries or anything like
Right.
that. They just play with this thing right over the test site. But they were doing some radical moves with it. And since I had the test flight schedule, statistically, the amount of traffic in the surrounding areas on the highway was lowest on Wednesdays. And that's why Dennis told us that all the test flights occurred only on Wednesdays, because it'd be the least chance that anyone would see what's going on.
And this was before the government had expanded the forbidden territory around Area 51 and Papoose Lake and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that occurred after my story came out. Then people started going up on the mountaintops and trying to look down into there, and they kind of freaked out and then did the land grab and pushed everybody back. But yeah, I think all that occurred long after that I came out.
So you're working there, and while you're working there, you're under this crazy schedule. Forgive me for explaining your story, but you would get these phone calls. You would have to go to the airport at 11 p.m., and your wife started thinking that you were having an affair.
Yeah.
I mean, in the clip there, again, there's more. Wait, it just goes on to another part of his story, which is fine. I'll probably make another video to cover more of his story, like how he even got started, right, with this. And some of the stuff that happened after, like how he got out of the program, right? So, again, I'll put links in the description so you can check everything out on your own. If you liked this video and you want to see me do another Bob Lazar video, please comment that down below so that I know. But, yeah, I do plan on doing another one, unless just the comments are like, don't do another one. But, yeah, I do want to, again, fresh look at his story and take a look at more. And I'm really just going to focus on this Joe Rogan interview. You know, that it's been viewed 58 million times. That's just on YouTube. All right, who knows on Spotify and everything else and all the clips that are of it. I mean, this one included, right? We're talking hundreds of millions of views, y'all, across platforms, probably more. I mean, who knows? It's got to be insane. So, again, I think it's worthwhile to look into. Just in recent events, fresh look, nothing wrong with that. Fresh perspective. Probably maybe plan on doing that with some other things. Just make sure, right? This is a big thing. This is a big deal, right? This topic. So I don't think there's anything wrong with just resetting, taking a fresh look. Again, you may end up at the same conclusion, but you could probably feel more comfortable knowing that that conclusion is something you're comfortable with. Because I don't want to have any regret. I don't want to have any like, oh man, I dismiss that too easily. Because you can always dismiss it, right? So it's not like you can't dismiss it later on. So, you know, let me just take a fresh look. Never know. Right? So anyway, all right, y'all. Thank y'all for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed today's video. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll have a brand new one, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, I do not miss a day. And again, if you've watched this far and you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, y'all. Come on. We're trying to get to 25,000. We can do it. We can do it. I think we're halfway there, more or less. So let's go, y'all. All right. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow, Vetters. Peace.